Hello, friend Pat Boone here, just like you. I'm listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Guild. Kevin McCloud and Tim Ross are the host of Tim and Kev's Big Design Adventure, a globe-trotting podcast centered on people, places, architecture, and design. George connected with them in the middle of the night to have an incredible rambling and funny chat. Later, we'll meet baritone saxophonist Leigh Pilzer, whose powerful sound has anchored ensembles from the DIVA Jazz Orchestra to the immortal Tommy Dorsey Orchestra. And now, here's your host, Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Hey, thanks, Tom. Can we rev up that thing back there?
Oh, yeah, hang on a sec.
Let's go back to 1960. It's the height of mid-century modern. Architecture magazines, which today run maybe 120 pages on a good month, were bursting at 350 pages a month. Modernist buildings were flying up in every town as the economy expanded after World War II. American modernism was at its peak, and architects were heralded for innovation. A bunch of these architects even made the cover of Time magazine, cementing their place beyond trade publications. Frank Lloyd Wright had just passed away in 1959. Eero Saarinen had finished up the GM Technical Center and was working on the TWA terminal. Mies finished the Seagram building. Modernism was booming as a sign of good times ahead. Soon, banks would catch this optimism and create thousands of modernist branches, assuring the public that they were in step with the times and the future. Modernist themes that broke with the past were form follows function, rejection of ornamentation, steel and glass, urban renewal, which didn't work out so well, glass curtain walls, and corporate identity or branding through architecture. That was a long time ago. The architects of 1960 were rebels against historical ornament, and they championed a machine-age aesthetic. But now, it's 2026, the beginning of mid-century modernism just for another century. Today's innovators are often rebelling against that very mid-century modernism. They want a better warmth, sustainability, and social meaning. Both eras share a commitment to advancing architecture through technology, but the definition of progress has fundamentally shifted. Who are we going to be talking about at preservation conferences 30 years from now? This century's mid-mod is a different flavor. More site-specific responses, sustainable mass timber materials, adaptive reuse, urban infill, and carbon reduction. The big names in this senior class of greatness include Jeannie Gang, Tom Kundig, Liz Dillard, Tom Main, and Bjarke Ingels. But all these folks are over 50. I ask you, who under 50 should we be watching? Who's doing really interesting work, so interesting that we should be putting them on the cover of Time? Let me know through george@usmodernist.org. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by the Brent R. Harris Charitable Trust, restorer of Richard Neutra's Kaufman Desert House in Palm Springs and 6 other houses in California, and by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs.
Kevin McCloud is the longtime host of Grand Designs on Channel 4 in Great Britain. He spent decades exploring how homes are imagined, built, and lived in, bringing curiosity to every project he features. Australian Tim Ross, comedian, broadcaster, writer, and passionate advocate for architecture, shows how buildings shape our lives, memories, and culture. Together, they host Tim and Kev's Big Design Adventure, a globe-trotting podcast about people, places, architecture, and design, with room for the quirky details that make great ideas stick. From modernist landmarks to unexpected everyday objects, they make design personal, human, and endlessly fascinating. George woke up very early one recent morning to chat with Tim and Kevin.
Tim, what time is it where you are?
It's currently 6:15 of the evening.
In the evening. And Kevin, what time is it where you are?
Well, I'm at 8:15 in the morning. What about you?
I am at 3 a.m. in the morning, and it is my delight to get up early and disturb my beautiful sleeping wife to come on and talk with you guys. It's such a thrill. I love the new podcast. I listened to 3 of the shows last night. You guys are really rocking it.
Thank you, George, and we appreciate you taking the short straw to get up early in the morning. You know,
Well, yeah.
it's very gentlemanly for us.
I have to say also, because this podcast is venerable and has ancient history, and ours does not. So we feel like the new kids on the block. Thank you, Headmaster.
Well, I aspire to what you're doing. I really loved your introductory video where you two are sitting together talking about the show. That was great. I want to see more of that. It reminded me of, do you know that series of movies with Steve Coogan, The Trip?
Yeah.
And Rob Brydon?
Yeah.
I could see the two of you riding around to buildings together in some car doing imitations of different celebrities like they do their Michael Caine contest. That would be a great series.
We'll end up doing charades of buildings. That will be our trick. That's what people will know. Here we go. It's the pyramids. What am I doing now?
Now, Tim has been a guest on the show before and has been on our advisory board. But Kevin, I'm meeting you for the first time. It's really nice to see you. I've, of course, seen Grand Designs forever. But there's one number I want to talk with you about. I think you'll know this number. It's 1:45.87. Do you know that number, Kev?
It's not the golden ratio. I know that.
No. It is your lap time on Top Gear.
You got that as a tattoo, haven't you?
I was beginning to panic. I didn't recognize it. That was quite a long while ago, about 15 years ago, George, yeah.
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 So I missed that show very much. I watched that show with that crew religiously. For those of you that have never seen Top Gear, it was a fun show with 3 guys about cars, particularly high-speed cars, and they had their own little racetrack. And every year they would have so it was called Star in a Reasonably Priced Car, I believe was a segment.
Episode. Yeah, Star in a reasonably priced, I can't say it, Star in a reasonably priced car. So basically it was the cheapest car you could find, and you were made to wear a crash helmet and drive around it very fast, yeah.
Where did you sit on the list there, Kev? Because I remember, was it
very high?
Okay, was he
he was number 2.
You fed me the line perfectly. Thank you, Tim. At JK1, I was a 20th of a second slower than him.
Wow.
And to see Kevin's face riding around the track, he was completely enthralled and did so well. It was like a professional driver. And I remembered that despite all your fame, Kev, and your shows and your series and where you've been, that's where I remembered you from. Because I know I've seen this guy on TV.
That's the single greatest contribution to broadcasting I may have made. Yes.
Now, Tim, how did the two of you meet?
I was working on a television show and I talked him into coming on it, which he kindly did. And so we had a little chat then. And then I found myself going to London every year for a few years, or most years actually now, apart from when a pesky old pandemic got in the way.
Yeah.
And so we just sort of would catch up and hang out and talk about the things we loved. And then a few years ago, we did a live show at the Sydney Opera House, which was an extraordinary experience. And then we sort of talked about working together some more, and it took some time to get it all together. And now here we are.
Yeah. Here we are with basically a podcast with no pictures about architecture and design.
How do you think I feel?
Yeah, I think there's something really special about, I think about this a lot, that if you want to drill down and let's face it, there's no one listening to this is not someone who's not interested in architecture or modernism. So what's often really important about these buildings is the people behind them, people who love them, the people who live in them, the people who have lived in them, and the ideas of the building, which are really important. So especially if you're talking about the ideas of modernism and why, we can't shake it, and the optimism of those buildings and what they mean to us and what they continue to mean to us, and how they excite people. And of course, brilliant photos can do that. And of course, great videos and Instagram and TV and films can do that. But there's plenty of that out there. But is there enough discussion about it in a way that you have to imagine and perhaps can't actually imagine it very well? But you could Google. Yes, there is now. We're involved in it.
Yes,
we're pretty happy with how it's going.
Yeah.
And you are taping these segments. Are you doing them remotely, or are you getting together every now and then? How does it work?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. So, I mean, a bit like you guys, we do everything in pursuit of trying to capture the story of a place or the story of people or the atmosphere even. So we've done stuff where we've recorded in Australia a little, and we've recorded in Europe, and we've recorded in the UK, and we've done that. We've actually recorded quite a lot of visual stuff, quite a lot of it. When we went to Denmark, we were recording everything on picture. And some of it's very wonky, of course. But we sort of pulled back from using a lot of video because we felt that was like making television. And we're both long in the tooth in television and long in the tooth in the tyranny of the visual, and how the visual kind of in television kind of it dominates the narrative arc. And so we wanted to do something that was a bit freer. And I think some of our best discussions have been had in hotel rooms after we've been somewhere, or in a cafe. Or we went to Arne Jacobsen's petrol station, which is north of Copenhagen, which he designed in the early 1930s. Which has got this beautiful canopy over it. It looks like one of those. It looks like something from the Johnson Wax building. Those enormous grape mushrooms.
Yes.
And it's tiled and it's fantastic. And we must have talked about it for about a good 20 minutes. Then we spent 2 hours talking rubbish, about petrol and cars. And then we saw some kids being transported. I mean, it was actually all about transport. And it must have been 12 kids on this carriage that gets pulled along by a bicycle. I can't even remember it now, actually. I should have photographed it. We should have filmed it, Tim. Damn.
Well, we can't really film children at the best of times, Kevin, but we should have. No, it was a
That's a different
thing.
crime, yes.
But you know how it's a place where they all ride bikes, and then in order to see basically a school bus go past with 12 kids in the back of a little cart at the back of a tricycle was extraordinary. And there was something so beautiful about it. And, we followed them in a non-creepy way and spoke to them. And
do I need to get your solicitor here? I mean, what do we need to know?
I think, Tim, what Tim means is that we went to speak to the teachers.
Yes.
Yeah, we went to speak to the teachers, who were wonderful. And, yeah.
Yeah, my point, now lost in conversation, was that we went for one thing and we came out with another. Actually, it all stitched together, and that's the joy of not being. There's somebody always saying, "Oh, we got to be somewhere else now. Sorry, you can't do that." And you think, no, actually, it'd be nice to just capture a moment if it's possible, or an atmosphere, or just stay in a building as we've done before and just record the reverberation of it or something. So, George, you're in the same business, so you know the subtleties of this.
Well, you both have been used to working with, 30 and 50 person crews on video productions. I assume it's just like the two of you lugging around a bag of microphones now, right?
Yeah, most of the time. Sometimes it changes, but I think there's some freedom in that.
Yeah.
And there's time and there's an ability for us to roll around in the building and take our time. And sometimes it takes you a while to get where you're going, or to find out what the story is of a building, or being able to articulate how it makes you feel. And sometimes that can be as simple as, this building's super cool, or which is fine too. But what is it that makes our little nerdy little hearts skip a beat when we go into something from a certain place? And one of the things that unites people who love modernism. I mean, one of the great things I understood is it's an international movement, but it also means it's an international way of connecting with people. I mean, that's how I know you, George, and that's how I know Kevin, and that's how we met these wonderful people in Manchester in the UK who have a modernist society. They have a shop front where they sell modernist books and they do exhibitions and they print magazines, and you walk in and they're your people.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, and we all sort of know each other through, you mentioned someone, I'll go, yeah, I know that person, Instagram, or just through people reaching out, and that global web of people who love modernism is an extraordinary thing, and it makes the world a happier and a smaller and more beautiful place.
Well, you can tell when the two of you are talking with each other that because it is a smaller production, there is a higher level of joy in your voices about the discovery of all this, which I think is just so charming.
That's interesting. We decided quite early on we weren't going to go with a production company, and therefore we were going to not earn any money from doing it.
Right.
But we also decided that it was better to, you know, you have an idea, and in the moment you have an idea with a mate, and it's a beautiful idea, and then you give it to somebody else and they start playing with it, and before you know it, if you're lucky to get it kind of commercialized in any way, it's almost unrecognizable, and you cling on to that original hope, sort of in vain almost, despite what eventually hits the screen or hits the radio or whatever. And this was just something we just knew we just enjoyed doing anyway, so we just carry on doing it, but record it. And then Tim and Maddie spend days editing it into common sense. But
I mean, it allows you not to make compromises. And I was making a podcast here in Australia about the history of Australian-made cars.
Yeah.
And for a period of time, we were making really excellent cars here, and they meant a lot to us. But in order for it to make sense for the commercial operators that I was working with, someone comes on and then you're doing this beautiful thing, and you're talking about people who are working in the factories. You're talking to the people who designed these cars in Australia in the 1970s and ended up moving to Detroit and becoming the head designers for GM there. And suddenly you're talking to the client who sells car insurance.
Yeah.
And they've got nothing to do with it. And you go, do I really have to talk to this person? Yes, you do. And I'm like, well, let's avoid that and do what we want to do and do it with integrity and do it with honesty. So from a discovery point of view, people can come in at any time, and the contents is about people. It's about architecture. It's about the connections that architecture and design makes through so many of us. But you can pick it up at any time, and hopefully the things that resonated with you will resonate with people around the world who aren't initially aware of what we do, but the themes are universal. And of course we've got mixed matching accents, but perhaps that's part of the charm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if we sounded the same, it would be really confusing, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have to explain who's who.
Yeah, and George also, it's a really interesting thing, this, because when you decide you're going to commit, and you know this, and it's a really small team, in this case, basically 2 people with a couple of people in the background helping us out, right? You've got to get on. If you're going to be stuck at an airport because you've missed your flight, no names, no pack drill, Tim, but, you've got to have a sense of humor about that.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
One of the themes that keeps coming through is that it continues to create connections with us personally, but also this idea, I mean, you'd be the same, George, the amount of people you would talk to, the buildings you go to, the things you see, that your passion has taken you to all sorts of places and created extraordinary relationships, and what you do is amazing and it needs to be saluted. But not everyone's always there in the room when you do an open house to see great houses, and sometimes there'll be 20 people and you get there because you know people or you're part of an architecture clique or something like that. So if you can demystify it and also bring that to a wider audience of people who perhaps don't understand initially what the attraction of architecture and design is, and make them feel part of something, like let them,
the community,
let them join,
yes,
join the club and the community that we love, that fills that cup every day, is a grand thing to be able to do.
I love going to events and talking with people, and you can tell that architecture, for most, is the 9th or 10th or 11th priority in their life. They've got other things going on, but it's very strong. It's right there in the kind of 9 to 11 block. And they go to it occasionally, but not nearly as much as they would like to. And they're so happy to find a group of people for whom, they're at that same interest. They're not the professionals who do it every day, but they're the fans who just love it.
Yeah, I love that. It's very easy, isn't it? I mean, Tim was just saying to do something and to have lots of congratulatory emails from architects. But it is like, it's a very small group of people who were there anyway already in that place. And to find people who just, if you can bring them in sideways, I love that. You sort of appeal to somebody's enthusiasm for their mum's pottery or aeroplanes or, Jerry Anderson television series, science fiction, whatever it is. And you bring them in sideways and then you sort of, if you can, join things up with little strings, not puppet strings, but little links, and that way you kind of almost entice people in, you beguile them in, almost, stealthily. Not that we should be doing that, but I love the fact that all these ideas are in fact connected and that you can range and you can move from transport infrastructure to a modernist building to children's toys. And that they all feed into who we are and our design world, and that is, I think that's just magical, completely brilliant, and it's a sort of triumph. I mean, I used to get excited when an architect wrote, and now I get excited when somebody who deliberately is not an architect, who's never really got engaged into the subject, gets excited by it. That is just the best.
I spoke to someone the other day who really liked the podcast. I was doing a talk, and then she talked about her other favourite podcast, which was something completely different, like two people doing silly things. And we've got to remember that all the time. That
Tim, that was our podcast.
You're right. People have diverse interests, and we are all complex, and we like a wide variety of things. And so it's good to know that we can surprise people and bring people on board all the time. And if people listen, you keep going, you keep doing it for as long as you can, or you just do it because you love it. Bit of both, I think.
Yeah, I do it for therapy as much as anything else.
And people have a story. What I love it when people come up and they're not involved in design at all. They don't live in a modernist house. They're not in the design field. But there was this weird home that they grew up with nearby, and they always wondered about it. And they come up and they tell me the street or the name of a neighbor. And if I have time, I'll start Googling for them on my phone and generally can find out something about this. And, the expression on their face, their life is like, oh, it's like part of their past is reconnected. And that part of the past, usually 9 times out of 10, is a very happy one. It's a very optimistic one because modernism was such a symbol of that the future was going to be great. We were all going to be working together. There was going to be peace everywhere. We were going to be in our flying cars with our two-way wrist radios and our little phaser guns to shoot at the aliens, right? That was the whole dream of modernism.
Absolutely. Cars that flew with big bubbly domed tops. We'd all be the Jetsons. Yeah.
Jet packs. Go to the moon. And I think there's a universality to that idea that no matter where you are, when you talk about modernism, that there is always someone who talks about a house around the corner where they grew up with that was much more interesting than their own.
Yeah.
And they always wanted to go inside. And that's sort of what we all live in, that world of opening up doors to let people into those houses from their distant past.
Yeah, and the connections with their mum's pottery, the salt shaker, the little jar on the counter. It may not have belonged exactly in your own home, although, of course, it did because it was there, but it also belonged in that other world, that modernist. It was a bridge.
Yeah.
And those bridges are kind of really interesting because they're populist and they form our childhoods. It's this thing, isn't it, about, you can read about history in a book and it seems so remote at times, or you can just remember where you grew up. And that's actually more powerful, of course, and almost, our own collective history is more important in a way, I find anyway. So that all things being connected idea is for me fascinating. I'm interested by what you said, George, about being able to kind of Google a building, because when you do that, very possibly the reason why it's actually on the internet in the first place is that somebody else has a memory of it, and somebody else has a story about it. And it is the stories that connect. And the story of how the building was built or who it was for is often secondary to the fact that it actually means so many things to so many different people. So somebody coming on board and saying, by the way, I don't know, is it important, this building or not? You know, somebody coming, as it were, from a base level to discover that there's a community of memories out there that they can, where their memory is just as valid. That to me is interesting.
And that's also in the battle to save, connecting people with those memories, particularly those big, public and civic buildings that people decide they might want to knock over. It's the most powerful emotion to tap into is the memories of, I went past this with my mum or dad, or my grandpa took me here when I was a kid, or we saw it on a train when we went past it, or we used to drive past that building every day, or I did my school plays there. Yes. Whatever it is, that every moment that connects us to a building is a moment that helps save them, I think.
I love talking with people who had experiences in modernist houses as children. So, for instance, the daughters and sons of architects who grew up with, generally it was their fathers, who were in the field, and how life was for them, because in typical situations, it was very different. The kind of conversations they would have at dinner would be different than other families, the places they would go on vacation, the furniture they had around, what they could touch and what they could not touch.
Yeah.
And of course, when you're a child, this is not about modernism. It's just like how all of life is. And then they leave the house and discover what the rest of the world is like, with various reactions, right?
Yeah. Most of them, if they go off to college, there's this crushing experience of living in digs. But I know exactly what you mean. And also, when you say when they go on vacation, what you really mean is when their parents take them on an architectural study tour.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what.
I mean, I laugh all the time because there is no doubt that my children are the only ones at their school that have probably ever heard the phrase, "Don't eat that ice cream on the fin mule chair."
My daughter, who's a design journalist now, used to rip the mick out of me because she, not proudly, she said, by the time I was 12, I could spot the difference between a cement pointed wall and a lime pointed wall. And for that matter, whether it was a lime and so whatever it was, different mixes. And now, of course, she's immensely grateful for that,
Yeah.
For the kind of, but at a time where it was just used as ammunition against me, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, but that's the fun part of it, I think. But
yeah.
Yeah, for the experience for the children of architects, and I've met a few who weren't allowed to move any of the furniture in their room, and I don't think that was good for them. I think that was
yes, right.
Kev was telling me about John Pawson and that hyper minimalism going on, but you go into his son's bedroom and it's Pantera posters on the wall.
There's a famous story. So the thing about John Pawson is that, king of minimal whatever, and he's married to a former director of Colfax and Fowler, who make chintz curtains.
Yeah.
Your favourite, Tim. Tim's got a thing going. Yeah. You've got a thing going for chintz. And one day, Tim, I'm going to take you. We're going to go to Colfax and Fowler just to look through the samples. Yeah. Anyway, so his wife, she's not very minimal, and they got kids. I think they're grown up now, but when they were younger, the story was she'd had this wall of cupboards at home, right? And his secretary would phone her when John Pawson was leaving the office, which would give her about 20 minutes to tidy the house.
Mm-hmm.
And these cupboards weren't really cupboards. They were more like an opening wall, revealing a small room behind it. And you'd open the cupboard doors. Basically, what it allowed her to do is use a broom and just shovel all the kids' stuff into the cupboard. And then shut the cupboard, so that there was this sort of artifice of minimalism. I love this idea that the world is chaotic, and then people come along and make straight edges out of it, and it's a glorious thing that the whole of our existence is some kind of relationship between chaos and order, and it's always in flux, and even the greats struggle
with it. I admire those people who can live minimalism. I went to this house in the outer suburbs of Melbourne, architect's own home. And it was that minimal that even the kitchen would be pushed away and hidden behind a wall or created. So when you needed the kitchen to come out, you'd simply pull it out. And then it was really in that room, otherwise it was a complete box. there was 4 chairs and you could see the swimming pool, and that was it. And so if you wanted a piece of toast, you have to pull the whole kitchen out. And then downstairs in the bedroom, there was a window into the pool so you could watch people swimming, and there was simply a bed in the middle that was a day bed that you'd make up at night to sleep on. Now, that's a commitment to living that I think is extraordinary.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Not for me.
Well, I want to talk about one of your podcast episodes because we are all men of a certain age. We remember the Jerry Anderson series of shows in the 60s and 70s. There was Space 1999, there was Thunderbirds, and quite a few more. Some of them I had never heard of before, actually. I don't think they made it to American syndicated television. But these series were, I remember, just so fantastic. And what was interesting about them is that the acting on them was completely serious. I mean, they were really trying to create this vision of the future, right? And with the ones involving puppets, like Thunderbirds, you really had to suspend belief. You were in on the joke that they were doing this, but they were doing it with really badly crafted puppets whose eyes would roll around.
Yeah, and in the case of some of them, their eyebrows would move, and also you could play across the series. And I think I don't know how many episodes there were, maybe 30 or 40. Across the series, you could spot the puppets whose hair changed color, who were the extras, who can the minor parts, and they were always the same puppets but with different eyebrow colors or something, or different clothes.
I didn't realize until we had that chat, Kev, because you did a really deep dive on it, and I do encourage everyone to listen to every episode of our podcast, but I mean, it was the size of the eyes, and they were all because of the size of the technology at the time, wasn't it? So you could work with what you could get, basically. So yeah.
And besides the puppets, the craftsmanship of the set design was really extraordinary. The spaceships and the moon bases and the submarines and everything was incredible.
Yeah, and the architecture was truly futuristic. It was sort of the time, but very much, of course, rooted in mid-20th century optimism and, inspired by comics and by all the changes that had happened in the 20th century, which was so disruptive and so tumultuous, the 2 wars and the political changes around the world. So, all of this, it addressed all of this. There was an enemy, an international kind of villain who had a vaguely Russian accent.
They always do, right?
Yeah, just vaguely. And his eyes would light up when he hypnotized people. That was great. Yeah. So, he had the most expensive head of any puppet, I think, in the series. And the live action stuff later on also pointed to the future. Yeah, UFO and Space 1999. It's funny you say that you didn't see many of the series because there were, I think, 12 or 14 separate incarnations, right? From Torchy and Fireball XL5 and Stingray through Thunderbirds and beyond. And this is because Jerry Anderson had such difficulty selling them into America because it was a British production. And you'll have noticed, of course, the ones you have seen, same voices kept on appearing through the series because, there weren't that many American actors over here. And so he really tried to sell it into the States, but found the syndication system really hard to penetrate, really hard to break. And that's why there are so many series, because he kept on, even though they were successful and had their own franchises with toys and wallpaper, actually the thing he wanted to do was to break America, and he never quite did it.
No.
I mean, good for you for seeking that out, George.
Well, I was surprised that he didn't have more success because at the time when he was nearing his height, the Avengers had come over with Patrick Macnee and Diana Rigg, and that was a blockbuster hit in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that there were other programs like that from, I think, ITC. They were the promoter who promoted for a while, I think, also Jerry Anderson.
Yeah.
Lou Grade it was who ran ITC. And things like The Persuaders with
Roger Moore
and Tony Curtis.
Great show.
Yes, great show.
Brilliantly set in the south of France mainly. So it was, although photographed on cardboard sets in West London. All of these were kind of the same ilk. And did you have The Prisoner with Patrick?
Oh, The Prisoner was my favorite series growing up. It was just so enigmatic all the time. And you were trying to figure out, what is this show?
Yeah, exactly. And there was this juxtaposition of different architecture and design and that amazing location, which you can visit in North Wales.
Port Merion, is that how you say it?
Port Merion.
Port Merion.
Designed by Clough Williams-Ellis, an architect.
In Wales?
In the northwest Wales, near Snowdon and Mount Snowdon, now called something else in Welsh. But the juxtaposition of those different worlds of modernism, the mini-moke, the white minimalist spheres that bubbled up to chase you across the beach. It's kind of very scary and sinister, as well as being rooted in the everyday. Really powerful bits of television for us. But, Jerry Anderson just felt he never quite made it onto that international stage.
And of course, at that time in the late 60s, you had, my love, Star Trek came out.
Yeah.
And influenced so many people in design, but also in going into careers in space. You always read about how the astronauts from countries all over the world saw Star Trek in their youth or the subsequent series in the 80s and wanted to explore and move mankind beyond our planet.
Yeah, there's a story. I don't know how true it is, and you might be able to corroborate this, George, but there's a story that Gene Roddenberry, when he was, they made the first series, right? They wrote the first series. And it was, I think, in development with a studio. And forgive me, I cannot remember the name of it. But the studio was being sold to another studio.
Yeah.
And let's say it was United Artists selling it to Paramount. I don't know. And Paramount said to United Artists, we want to buy your studio. And United Artists said, yeah, we'll sell it to you, but only if you take this dud show we've got that we don't want to make called Star Trek.
Yeah.
And they made it, and they sort of put it out, and there was all kinds of contractual agreements why they had to. And it didn't have a huge audience at all, but the audience was so vociferous and so engaged. They wrote thousands of letters, and that encouraged the commissioning of a second series.
It was Paramount and Desilu. It was Lucille Ball's production company.
How do you know that?
Who, well, I'm a nerd, so there you go. So Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz had Desilu, which was one of the biggest studios there. They were really running out of money, partially because of Star Trek, because it was so expensive to film. And, of course, everything had to be created from scratch. It wasn't like you could go on a back lot and just shoot it. You had to build all the sets, all the uniforms, all the backdrops, all the costumes, all the aliens. And they also had another series at the same time, same studio, Mission Impossible, which was also incredibly expensive to produce.
Yeah.
So Lucille Ball was at the helm of two of the most creative, iconic series ever.
You just
I did not know.
You tied all this together with a beautiful pink Lucille Ball bow, and you wrapped in, Mission Impossible. Even if we'd not had Mission Impossible ever, we'd still have to have Lalo Schifrin in our world.
Yes. And another trivial note, that's one of the few songs in pop culture in a 5/4 beat.
Now, I'm just going to have to sit here and just hum it out. But yeah, I think you might be right. Is the whole thing in 5/4?
Yeah, the whole thing is in 5/4.
It is. And
hum it out for us, Kev.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I think I've got a feeling that in the later films with Cruise, that is it. Dun, 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 dun. No, it's still 5/4, isn't it? Yeah. It's just got that.
That theme, and then Take 5. By Dave Brubeck. Were the two big hits kind of that day, and they remain with us as the icons of 5/4 time. So. As an aside there. And now we have Kevin singing the entire Mission Impossible theme song with syncopation.
and drums, and the whole thing. All in.
Everyone's doing it now. I'm not the only one, so everyone listening is going to
It's too good. It's too good a piece of music. And I'm that's it. I'm a big fan of Schifrin.
Yes.
Has he been on your... You must have talked to
I believe he's passed away at this point.
You must have talked about his music on the show.
We have talked about it, yes.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to get him on. But, you look through the music of that era, and he's everywhere.
Sure.
During the 70s, when private detective shows were very big, he did so many of those with the theme backgrounds. And of course, you had the sets in the 70s were kind of phasing out of modernism and going into a whole other genre, right? It wasn't quite as cool as it was. And now what I love is that many of the series being created around the world and other things are using these as background sets, which leads me to The Studio. Yeah. Great award-winning series. And you all recently had on the set designer for that, right?
We did, Julie Burkhoff, yeah, who's an amazing art director and also had done The Handmaid's Tale beforehand. So she's got form with atmosphere, you know, and the glorious thing about The Studio was her telling the stories about Seth Rogen, and because he's a massive fan of architecture, and his writing partner Evan, you know, both of them just wanted to immerse themselves architecturally in that time, in that world, mid-century. And what was that thing she said? She said normally, you know, she's like the first person to like meet the team, and because they go on location scouting together and stuff. Yeah. And she said by the time they met, they're like, Seth Rogen had been working with the costume designer for 6 months, and they'd already figured out the whole palette of the show,
the color,
with clothes, you know.
I mean, I loved how she talked about how they went you know, because there were those Lautner houses in the series, and normally in a set where they just go and have a location shoot, there'd be like 2 people, and then suddenly goes, I want to go to that one too, and then they'd have a minibus and 20 people would be going to check it out, which I don't blame them for at all.
Well, there's a scene in the studio where they are filming something, and so you're seeing the filming of a filming, and that was in a John Lautner house. Yeah. And they're trying to capture this particular shot before the sun goes down, I believe is the backstory. Yeah. And you can really feel the tension of them trying to get this exact shot before all the light goes away. And it's really just a love letter to this house, which is up on a ridge in Silver Lake, designed by John Lautner. I've had the privilege of being there. We had an event there a couple of years ago, and just stunning. And then there's also the Kelly Lynch and Mitch Glazer house, which serves as the house for the studio executive. And that's a spectacular sight as well.
Yeah, that was filmed on the deck, wasn't it, with Catherine O'Hara?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I asked Julie that they shot that, and you see right over the center of LA, you know, there's a kind of, in the distance of the great towers of the city, and there's this rainbow which just lands in LA. And I said, did you put that in post? And she said, no, it was there. We just turned up. Yeah. It was there. We just filmed it. And there's so much of that series you realize, despite all the huge amount of work that goes into it, that was happenstance, that was, you know, you described the Lautner house and it's arriving there and filming it and the tension of the sun going down. But of course, they were trying to do all this on really long shots that lasted, you know, 2 to 3 minutes at a time. And and the guys were arriving, and they were enacting the interruption, as you say, of a shoot, you know, and it all going wrong as a result of them being there. But of course, with the second crew filming it and fighting the light and everything, you can imagine
But they were actually, I mean, they were that the one, they were fighting the same problem as the issue on the show, was they were trying to get it done in time.
Yeah, almost as if it wasn't scripted at all.
Not scripted at all. But isn't it wonderful that those owners of those homes did say yes to that?
Yes.
That's a glorious gift, I think. You know, no one does these things for free, but they don't have to do them. But I imagine, obviously, you know, both of those houses, they've been obviously kind enough to open them up for events, which says a lot about those people, you know, to help you out, George. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
They're really, really generous. And I think the other thing is that people get such inspiration from seeing these things. I mean, and they can lock on to the big picture in terms of the architecture of they're seeing. But most people, I find, lock on to something much more specific. Like, for instance, they'll see a doorknob or a picture or a stovetop or a color or a texture or a piece of wood. And they just light up about this, and they have to go find this thing somewhere to bring back to their own home. You can see this. I tell people that, you know, the Eames chair is the starter drug of modernism, because
it's the spliff.
Yeah. It's because if you're living in your little Cape Cod cottage that you've rented, but you have your one Eames chair as your inspiration for the home you want to have one day.
Yeah.
That's enough to carry you through.
Okay, so what's the cocaine then?
Yeah, right. I don't know. Barcelona?
It could be that in a house in the Hollywood Hills, for 50 million or whatever. But that's a really interesting point, because so much of this stuff is accessible and so much of it is actually, but you've got to do the research. You've got to actually interrogate almost your own integrity here, haven't you? And not kind of just be distracted by something, but at the same time think, what is it about this time, this place, this thing, and what can I take away? And should it just be a photograph of this building, or should I go and research that chair? Mm-hmm. And of course, it can take a lifetime to find or to assemble. Tim knows I'm quite a cheapskate, but for the first time last year, I bought a set of Vitso shelving from Vitso, which is a company, Danish origin, and Dieter Rams designed this furniture system. It's really beautiful. And I've always admired it in other people's houses. And I was sitting just looking at it last night. I just sat on the sofa and just looked at and just found a huge amount of pleasure looking at books sitting on that system. Now, it sounds really shallow to say this in a way, because, it's a material object and it's just, a bit of expensive purchase. By the same token, it's also bound up in that is my whole life, as it were, 60 years of admiring that thing. And it's a little bit like owning a really fast sports car. You have a bit of imposter syndrome.
Perhaps a V8, Kev?
A V8 or a straight six. These days, I'm really relaxed about that. Or it could be electric. I've got a V8 and a straight six and an electric car.
Yes, because on Top Gear, you were very much into the V8 at the time.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I'm making a program about cars at the moment, cars and design, and we went off to a Swedish archive. Now, this sounds really unlikely, right? So the largest number of American cars outside America, there might be in Cuba, but the vintage cars, certainly veteran ones, is in Sweden, where the entire nation goes mad for them. It's like an alternative national character that these cars represent, of excess, chrome, of fantasy, and because the Swedish national character is quite restrained. Yes. And even the word design, I was told, is they see suspiciously. They're super rational people. So we went to this place and looked at all these American cars, which had all been or were all being chopped and dropped and shaped and slightly remodeled and resculpted by one, or there's several guys in Sweden that do this. We met one of them. And I mean, the people who are bringing him these cars are bankers, and really successful business people who've got enough money to kind of basically recommission and reinterpret something for the modern world, which is at its core from the 1950s or 60s, which is absolutely, breathes all of those stories that we've been talking about. But they are being slightly just polished or altered or just reshaped a little. I mean, to be personalized. And it's a little bit like buying a modernist building and, kind of just gently polishing it up.
Nudging it along.
Renewing the glazing or something, whatever it is. Yeah, nudging it along, in a really respectful way and a really informed way. And I do love the parallels between, what am I saying here? I think I'm saying I love the parallels between car ownership design and the home and the expressions that these 20th century objects make, that because they're such powerful symbols of who we are in our own history and our corporate and our cultural collective history as well. So I can't talk about the architecture without thinking about what goes with it, people and furniture and the object parked outside as well. What's interesting about Corb's houses is that they were all photographed with basically his cars, right? And he loved putting his car in front of it. He had quite a rare French car. And the houses look fabulous, of course, and the cars look completely anachronistic, like they're 60 years out of date. Because by the time we were evolving Corbusier's ideas into architecture in the 1960s and 70s, then actually his vehicles were really old-fashioned. It was the evolution, the slow evolution of modernist architecture and the very fast evolution of car design through the 20th century. So you compare a 1970s car really well with a 1920s house, it seems to me. That kind of roughly fits.
The show is Tim and Kev's Great Adventure, a podcast you can see on all major platforms. Guys, thanks so much for talking with me. This has just been delightful.
Pleasure, George. Thank you so much for your time. It's always great to see you and keep up all the wonderful work you do. It's really inspiring, mate, and you're an absolute legend.
Yeah, to quote Tim from earlier, we salute you, George.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go forth and prosper.
That was George's conversation with Tim Ross and Kevin McCloud, host of Tim and Kev's Big Design Adventure.
I first saw Leigh Pilzer on a video of the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra playing at Avalon, and there was this woman at the end of the row playing the sax, but she wasn't just playing one sax, she was playing 3 saxophones almost. She was like juggling them between songs. Leigh, what was that all about? I mean, how did you handle all these instruments down there?
With great care. Actually, it was a baritone saxophone and an alto saxophone and a bass clarinet.
Okay.
And that's not atypical. The idea is a very standard big band instrumentation for the saxophone section is 2 alto saxophones, 2 tenor saxophones, and a baritone saxophone. Historically, the alto players might double. They might play flute or clarinet. The tenors will play clarinet, and the baritone will play bass clarinet. So think lush ballads and think those beautiful kind of lush sustained sounds. So that's what the bass clarinet is for. Where the alto comes in, especially beginning like with the Glenn Miller band with the classic clarinet lead sound. At the time, the baritone player in the Miller band, Ernie Caceres, played the clarinet parts. So what you'd end up with was clarinet, 2 altos, and 2 tenors. The baritone player would play clarinet. Now, there's more of an expectation that the lead alto player will be playing the lead clarinet part. And so what happens then, if you're still with me, is the second alto player is playing what would be called a first alto part, and then I pick up the alto and play the second alto part. The tenors stay put, and there is no baritone, but that's a very classic sound of clarinet, 2 altos, 2 tenors. It's great on a tune where that's just all it is for the whole tune. What's really treacherous is sometimes there's not that much time to switch, and sometimes there's not a whole lot of room for everything. It can get tricky, and then you get very good at things like playing alto saxophone with a baritone saxophone balanced in your lap. And
that's what I was seeing, yes.
Yep. But it's part of the job. It's what we do.
Now, you've been playing with a group for a while. This group is at least 30 years old, and I had never heard about them until I started researching you, and that's the Divas. What are they all about?
It's the DIVA Jazz Orchestra. The band started in 1992. My first performance was in 1997, and we don't really remember when I became full-time. I think it was about 2003. It was started by a man named Stanley Kay, who was Buddy Rich's manager for some time. He also, you'll be interested here, Stanley was the drummer on Patty Page's recording of How Much Is That Doggy in the Window?
Wow.
But Stanley happened to encounter a woman named Sherry Miracle playing percussion, maybe with the New York Pops Orchestra or led by Skitch Henderson. And Stanley thought, Sherry's such a fabulous player. Like, why do I not know about more women? Are there more women out there playing? And so he and some others, including John LaBarbera, decided to form a band. It's a concert jazz ensemble where the membership would be all women. So they held auditions, which I heard about just after the auditions had taken place. So I didn't get to take part in that first round. They assembled the band in like the summer of 92. And I think the first performance was March 30th, 1993. And the band's been going strong since. We tour nationally. We've toured internationally. At this point, I don't even remember how many CDs that we've put out. DIVA is not a repertory orchestra. We don't play the music of any other ensembles. It's all music written for the band. Or we did a recording with Johnny Mandel, the fabulous composer and arranger. And certainly everybody's heard the theme from MASH and everybody's heard, Emily, but Johnny had never recorded them on an album, his own name, so it's, John, the man and his music, the DIVA Jazz Orchestra plays Johnny Mandel. He conducted us for that. We have a recording of Tommy Newsome arrangements, Tommy from the Tonight Show.
Tonight Show, sure.
Yeah, it's called TNT, a Tommy Newsome tribute. And then some of the stuff is a little more very rooted in straight ahead jazz, swinging and straight ahead. And that's, Sherry and I bond on that. Absolutely. That's where I come from. And my musical heart is very firmly in the swing and cool jazz and hard bop traditions. So, that I don't care about the rest. I do, but we've performed live with Diane Shore and Ann Hampton Calloway, both previous guests on your show. We toured with Manhattan Transfer on
Lovely.
their
Yeah.
farewell tour. So Cheryl and Janice, and we've had some just fantastic opportunities with the band.
Well, let's hear one of these songs. You wrote this song called East Coast Andy, which you had recorded with Diva at one point for their 25th anniversary.
For that, Sherry wanted something really special where all the music was written by members of the band. So this was something that I had written and arranged for Diva, and I'm very proud of that arrangement. But then I realized, I've never recorded this with my own group. So what you're hearing is a sneak preview of a raw, rough track directly from the studio to you. No magic involved. This is what it sounded like.
Well, here's Leigh with East Coast Andy. Leigh, tell me about how you met Bill Potts and what kind of influence he had on you.
Oh boy, without Bill, I would be a cellist and I would be teaching classical music theory at a college level instead of playing baritone saxophone and teaching jazz theory at a college level. Bill was a composer and arranger. Many people might be familiar with him for having composed and arranged the title track to Buddy Rich's Big Swing Face album. That was Bill's tune. He wrote for a number of bands. He has a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous treatment of Porgy and Bess. It's called The Jazz Soul of Porgy and Bess. But Bill, he was in New York for a while, but he was born and raised in Arlington, Virginia. And so he had come back to the area and he was living in Rockville, Maryland, where he worked at the community college, Montgomery College. What he did there was he was actually the recording engineer. So he recorded all of the concerts and the recitals and all of that. He also would teach occasionally an arranging course. They used to have a summer program for like high school students that were involved with jazz, and they would play in bands and this and that. And a number of my friends from high school were involved with that. Now, I played the cello, so I was not involved with that. But I dabbled on playing the piano in my high school jazz ensemble. So they knew I liked jazz, and they told me about this band that was playing on Monday nights in Rockville, Maryland at this restaurant. And this was not Bill's band. It was a gentleman named Mike Crotty. But they said, oh, you should come by. You should hear this band. So I had orchestra rehearsals on Monday night. So I would go to orchestra rehearsal, and then I would cart my cello into the restaurant because I didn't want to leave it in the car. And here was this man that was always there, about 6 feet, 6'2", something zoftig, to put it gently, with snow white hair and a snow white beard and this deep voice. Hi, darling. And my friends knew Bill. Bill knew I was interested in jazz, and he sort of took me and some others, would have us over to his apartment and would play music for us and sort of expose us, just about here's what music sounds like. He would take us to hear concerts, and he knew everybody. So he would introduce us to everybody. So I have a picture of myself sitting in a dressing room on my 18th birthday with my ear cocked to Clark Terry, who's playing me Happy Birthday on his horn.
Wow.
Yeah. So Bill took me to hear the Count Basie band, that organic, elemental, compelling swing. I was like, I need to do that. That's what I need to do. It was never about him. It was always about just the students and his proteges. I abhor the word mentee, but I digress. So, he put me on a path.
Well, let's hear another one of your songs. This one is called Keep Holding On. Leigh, I noted in your bio that you were in the horn section for Eva Cassidy, but that must have been a long time ago because she's been gone now, 30 years?
She died in either 97 or 98.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a minute, but I had gotten involved with Eva because she and her producer wanted somebody to write an arrangement of Blues in the Night, write horns for her. So I had done that. At the time, they didn't release it, but through her, I got involved with writing for the group that she and Chuck Brown had together. And from there went on to write for Chuck. But Eva was, I wrote a number of horn arrangements and was, able to play on those recordings and perform with them live. And she was just
really incredible.
A talent. One of those talents comes along like once every, I don't know how many few years, but she was incredible and a lovely, lovely human. Lovely human.
You can hear Eva Cassidy's songs, of course, on YouTube, and her albums are still selling. Leigh, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a real pleasure.
It's been great fun talking and taking some little trips down memory lane, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by the Brent R. Harris Charitable Trust, restorer of Richard Neutscher's Kaufman Desert House in Palm Springs, and 6 other houses in California. And by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 25,000 significant modernist houses, and access 5 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl, with guest research by Bobby Morris. Got a guest to suggest for our show? Write her at bobby@usmodernist.org. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I'll be back soon with another multi-mid-century modern edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.